Hi, welcome back to the shed for episode 13 of the Stratocaster build, where I'm going to be doing one of my favourite parts of the build process, and that's carving the neck. So in the last episode we got these frets knocked in eventually. It was an absolute nightmare. I'm hoping that the guitar building gods are going to be a little bit kinder to me in this episode, because it's time to get the neck carved. I've got some templates that I can use for this, so that should be fairly straightforward. So realistically now it's just a case of getting it laid out and set up ready for carving. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to square a line across in the 1st and the 12th fret positions, and I'll just use these to locate the templates when I do the initial carving with the file to get the profiles that I want. And also, while I'm at it, I'm going to take some measurements from the centre line and mark out the halfway point so that I can get some straight lines in. That will be the first facets that I cut once we get to that stage. Next up, I'm going to need the body. I'll stick the neck in the pocket, and I'm going to mark where it joins the pocket, but I'm also going to mark a little way in front of that and just set up my sliding bevel. Mark that in. That will be a little bit of a radius. Now I'm just going to sketch in kind of how I want that transition to go. At the headstock, something like that. And one last step is I'm going to kind of eyeball this halfway along the neck. And that will form the other half of that first facet once we get to that. So with that done, I think we can get this set up in the vise with my high-tech neck holding jig. And with that all set out, we can now start to work at these 1st and 12th fret positions. I've got my templates. I've actually adjusted these slightly off camera, and I've made these exact replicas of my favourite Stratocaster neck. So that means they're a little bit smaller in profile than they were before, but these new lines that I've put on indicate where they need to come to on the neck. Now you might have missed that I actually put a poll on my Instagram account regarding how I was going to go about carving this neck, and I gave 4 options. One was the Shinto rasp, one was a spoke shave, number 3 was a combination of the Shinto rasp and the spoke shave, and number 4 was using my teeth. As you can imagine, using my teeth was the winner by a country mile. I'm not going to do that. I am going to do it with a spoke shave. But first of all, I need to use this kind of rough, crude, old-fashioned rasp just to get these elements cut in at the 1st and 12th frets. From there, we can use some rather more subtle tools. And realistically, it's just a case of kind of having at this, work the material down evenly on both the top and the bottom of the neck, and then having a look every now and again just to see how we're going with the profile gauge. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on with a little trick that I used when I was cutting the neck pocket. You saw that, but I'm just going to put some black on there, and I can use that to show where my high spots are and where I need to be taking material out. Okay, we're getting somewhere near now, and I can tell that because when I put my little marks on, I'm getting a much bigger contact area into there. So I'm just going to carry on working that out. I'm not going to kind of do it right the way down to where I need it at this stage, because I need to leave a little bit of material just for fine tuning, but we are still a little way off. Although having said that, we are getting pretty close now. And as you can probably see there, that's leaving that witness line virtually the whole way around now. There's just a little flat spot on the back of the neck. So I'm happy to leave that there and move up to the 12th fret position, go through exactly the same process there. Okay, so that's the 12th position, kind of pretty close to where I need it. Again, there is just a tiny little bit of a flat spot on the very back of the neck, but we can sort that out with a little bit of sanding, etc. when we get to that point. So from here on in, I'm going to take to the spoke shave, and as always, I've got this spoke shave set up so it's going to take more of a cut this end of the blade than it is there. So I've got the option of kind of adjusting how much material I'm taking off depending on how this is going. So we might find that the grain on this cuts very nicely so we can take more off, or we might need to just kind of dial things back a bit and be a little bit more gentle. And I also need to establish which way the grain's going. What I'm going to do in the first instance is I'm going to basically spoke shave in a line which goes between this line on the back of the neck and this line on the side. I'll do that on both sides, and then the routine is just to kind of subdivide those facets up into halves and keep working my way through them until I've established something that is relatively neck shaped. When I started doing this, I used to use multiple facets and lots of lines. As I've progressed through my neck making journey, I'm able to do it in less and less bites, but my advice would be, if you're doing this for the first or for your first few attempts at doing it, just make as many faceted passes as you need to, just to keep your neck on target. The idea of these facets is that you're working to a straight line up the neck, so it's going to keep everything nice and straight, in theory anyway. So I'm going to stop talking and we'll just see if we can start shaving this down, and it seems to be cutting really nice in that direction. And what I'm going to do basically is I'm going to work down to this line at quite a steep angle. I'll work back to that line again at quite a steep angle, which will leave me a hump in the middle, and then I'll flatten that off to leave the facet that we want. this maple is working very nicely, but you might have noticed there's some dark kind of streaks in the timber, which is not ideal, but hopefully we'll be able to take these out, putting this radius in. There is one on the front of the headstock as well, I'll show you that in a minute. Unfortunately, I think that one is too deep, it's not going to sand out or anything, but that's just the nature of working with wood, I suppose. So that's those first two facets done. So from there, I'm going to roughly eyeball these. I'm going to come in, mark half of that, and again half of this on the top, and then just take out this material. Once you've done the first big ones, this tends to then go quite quickly because you take in less and less material with each pass. And now we've got to that stage where we're very, very close. I'm now going to take a nice clean carving file and just start blending that all in. Into a nice smooth radius. And we can also, at this stage, I'm just using a small straight edge just to see if there's any kind of major lumps or bumps in there. And there are a few little ones, but they're not massive. So I'm not going to worry about those too much at this point in time. I'll wait until I've got these transitions done, and then I'll be able to get a much bigger straight edge in and really gauge things properly. But I think for the time being, I'm fairly happy with that. I think we're pretty close to where we need to be, so we can actually start to work in some of these transitions. And for the most part, these transitions are just going to be cut in with a chisel. And obviously, because I've cut through all of this grain, it means I've effectively created a stop cut for the vast majority of this material. So my chances of chipping this or splitting it are very, very much reduced, because whenever I cut some of this out, it's just going to split as far as that stop cut. Fingers crossed, touch wood, we won't cause any damage doing this. But it is kind of important to have a reasonably sharp chisel. And in fact, I think I'm going to break out this little spoon gouge. And I think that's about as close as we're going to get with the chisel for now. So again, this time a curved carving file. And now if we get a straight edge on there, you can see that we're pretty good right the way through here, but when we get to here it kicks up and there's a big gap, so we need to get in there again with the chisel and just remove a bit more of that. Okay, we're pretty good through there now. I can still feel a few little lumps and bumps, but I think we're kind of getting very close to sanding territory, so I'm going to leave that now and we can head up to the other end of the neck and start to get the heel transition done. And doing this heel end of the neck is pretty much the same process as doing the headstock end, and it's just really working this material off. And what I'm doing is I'm going to work it into this V shape that we've drawn on the top. This will come into a radius around here, and I'll kind of sketch that in for demonstration purposes, but that will tend to form itself as you kind of get the radius of the neck up to that point, so we won't worry about that too much. And realistically it's just a case of mallet, chisel and work that material out. And then from there, again, let's get the carving file on it. And just remove any remaining excess material. And there we have the bulk of the neck carved. There is still a little bit of cleaning up work to do, a little bit of sanding just to make it all a bit nicer, but all in all I'm very happy with that. I'm very happy with the way it feels. It's got a nice shape to it and it all seems to have carved very nicely. There is a little tiny one of those little dark marks on the back of there. I might be able to sand through that and get rid of it. However, there is one on the front of here and I really don't think that that's going anywhere. I think we're stuck with that, unfortunately, but we are where we are with it. It's wood and these things happen. So that's another giant step forward taken with this neck. We're pretty much there with it now. There is a little bit of finish sanding left to do, but apart from that, we're kind of done with it for the time being. So next up, we've got some electronics work to tackle, and then we can start getting some finish preparation done. But that's not going to be for this episode. I'm going to save that for later. So as always, don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.